The best revenge isn't success. It's total invisibility until the moment your opponent realizes they've lost a war they didn't even know they were fighting. 4 years ago, I was written off as a failed investment. Today, I'm the man who's coming for their market share. You want to know how to survive when even your own DNA bets against you. Listen closely. My father's Nikon was worth $5,000, but in that second, his hands forgot how to hold it. I stood there, squinting against the blinding June sun reflecting off the sea of white folding chairs at St. Jude's University Stadium. The heat was heavy, smelling of freshly cut grass and expensive perfume. But I felt a strange, icy calm. I was draped in a heavy black robe, the gold Valedictorian stole weighing anchor across my shoulders. I looked directly into the front row. There he was, Harold Miller, my father. He looked exactly like the man who had audited my soul for years ago. Sharp suit, polished shoes, and that predatory focus. He was leaning forward, his long telephoto lens aimed precisely at the section where the honors student sat, waiting to capture the crowning moment of his masterpiece. My brother Ryan, the dean's voice crackled through the massive stadium speakers, echoing against the concrete stands. It is my distinct privilege to introduce this year's valedictorian and recipient of the Presidential Gold Medal, Kevin Miller. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. I watched the color drain from my father's face in real time. It was like watching a skyscraper collapse in slow motion. The camera didn't just lower, it sagged. His hands, usually so steady and commanding, began to tremble. My mother, sitting beside him in a dress that cost more than my first 2 years of groceries, let her bouquet of white lilies tilt until they hit the turf. They didn't know I was here. They didn't know I'd spent the last 4 years bleeding for every credit hour. In their reality, I was 500 miles away, a written-off asset supposedly hauling crates in a warehouse in rural Ohio, learning the value of $1 because I wasn't worth the investment of a tuition check. But I wasn't in a warehouse. I was 20 feet away from them, stepping up to the mahogany podium. As I adjusted the microphone, the feedback hummed a sharp, piercing sound that seemed to snap my father out of his trance. Our eyes locked. He looked at me as if I were a ghost, but I was the most solid thing in that stadium. I had a story to tell, and for the first time in 24 years, he was forced to listen to a voice he thought he had successfully silenced. The memory tasted like expensive scotch and cold sweat. It happened in the war room, my father's private study in our Greenwich estate. The air was thick with the scent of aged mahogany and the rhythmic, suffocating tick-tick-tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. My father, Harold, didn't do family chats. He did strategic planning sessions. He sat behind his desk, the blue light from his dual monitors reflecting off his glasses. Ryan and I sat opposite him, like junior associates waiting for a performance review. Between us lay the weapon of choice, a stack of color-coded Excel spreadsheets. Let's talk numbers, my father began. He didn't look at us. He looked at the data. College is a capital deployment, and like any fund manager, I have to look at the projected ROI. He tapped a cell on the screen. Ryan, St. Jude's University. Total cost, $315,000. Then he moved his finger to mine. Kevin, mid-tier state local tech. Total cost, $28,000. Ryan is a growth stock, he said, his voice as clinical as a surgeon's. He has the charisma, the networking instinct, the high alpha potential. St. Jude's is the right market for him. We've already wired the first installment for his tuition, housing, and a meal plan. Then he turned to me. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Kevin, you're stable. You're reliable, sure. But in terms of a portfolio, you're low yield. You don't command a room. You don't lead. He leaned back, steepled his fingers, and delivered the verdict. We won't be funding your education. It's not personal, Kevin. It's strategic. You can take out some predatory loans for the local community college. Or better yet, I can get you a floor supervising gig at the Ohio Distribution Center. You need to find your own level. My mother sat in the corner, nursing a glass of Chardonnay, her eyes fixed on a painting on the wall. She didn't blink. She didn't object. She had already signed off on the audit. Beside me, Ryan tried to look sympathetic, but I could see the relief radiating off him. He was the golden son, the chosen investment. I was the overhead that needed to be cut. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't even raise my voice. I just watched the way the light hit the spreadsheet and realized that the man sitting across from me wasn't my father anymore. He was a creditor. And if he wasn't going to bet on me, I would have to stage a hostile takeover of my own life that night. I realized I had to stop being a son and start being a founder. The first Thanksgiving didn't feel like a holiday. It felt like a battlefield, while Ryan was likely at some exclusive PI game mixer in a cashmere sweater. I was pulling a double shift at Joe's Diner, a greasy spoon on the edge of town where the air stayed thick with the smell of burnt onions and cheap floor cleaner. I was working for tips to cover the $400 textbook for advanced macroeconomics, a book my father could have bought with the pocket change he leaves on his dresser. My hands were shaking from the 8th cup of industrial strength coffee I'd down to stay upright. During my 15-minute break, I sat on a milk crate by the dumpster and made the mistake of opening Instagram. There it was, a high-definition snapshot of perfection. The caption read, "Nothing beats being home for the holidays. Family is everything." It was a photo of our dining room in Greenwich. The candlelight caught the sparkle of the crystal stemware. The turkey was a golden brown masterpiece. But it wasn't the food that gutted me, it was the geometry. My father sat at the head of the table. My mother and Ryan sat on either side. 3 place settings, 3 chairs, 3 wine glasses raised in a toast to a future I was no longer invited to inhabit. The table was perfectly symmetrical. There wasn't even a gap where my chair used to be. It was as if they had photoshopped me out of the family lineage in real -time. In their world, I wasn't just away at school. I was a ghost. I had been deleted from the balance sheet to make the margins look cleaner. I looked down at my hands stained with dishwater and grease, and then back at the glowing screen. A cold, hard clarity settled in my chest, sharper than the November wind cutting through my thin work shirt. I realized that if I died that night in that diner, they wouldn't have to change a single thing about their dinner plans. I didn't cry. I just closed the APP, deleted their profiles from my feed, and walked back into the kitchen. If I was a ghost to them, fine. But I was going to be the kind of ghost that haunts their every calculation until the day they realized the low-yield asset was the only thing holding the whole structure together. My new reality was a grey industrial town 300 miles and a world away from the manicured lawns of Greenwich. I lived in a room so small the radiator hummed like a dying engine, and the walls were thin enough to hear my neighbor's cough. But I didn't care about the aesthetics. I was building infrastructure. My alarm didn't just beep. It jolted me awake at 4 a.m. every single morning, while Ryan was posting blurry photos from Fred parties, solo cups raised, surrounded by people who loved his father's bank account. I was pulling on a heavy work hoodie and heading to the campus athletic center. My job was the graveyard clean up. I spent those PRE dawn hours mopping sweat and crying off the basketball courts and sanitizing weight benches. But I wasn't just a janitor. I had a system. I had taped my study guides for advanced macroeconomics and econometrics to the handle of my industrial mop. Mop, pivot, memorize the formula for price elasticity. Scrub, rinse, internalize the theory of Nash equilibrium. Every drop of sweat was a deposit into a secret account. I wasn't just getting an education. I was hardening myself. I became invisible. To the other students, I was the guy in the shadows with the bucket. To my family, I was a footnote. But in that silence, I found the Sterling Grant dot in the world of academia. The Sterling Grant is a myth. It's not just a scholarship. It's a total takeover. It pays for 100% of tuition, housing, books, and a living stipend at any top-tier partner institution in the country. They only select one student out of 10,000. It's a grant designed for independent students who demonstrate extreme resilience and elite academic output. It was a moonshot. Statistically, it was impossible. But my father had taught me how to read the odds, and I knew something he didn't. Most people are too afraid of the impossible to even apply. I stopped sleeping 5 hours and dropped it to 4. I stopped eating to be full and started eating to survive. I wasn't a student anymore. I was a machine designed to win that grant. Because the Sterling Grant wasn't just money, it was my exit strategy. It was the only way to get back into the rooms my father had locked me out of, not as a guest, but as the owner. Professor Alistair Sterling didn't teach. He interrogated. He was a legendary economist who had left Wall Street because he found the people there intellectually flabby. In his classroom, there was no such thing as enough effort. You were either precise or you were wrong. I'll never forget the day he handed back my midterm paper on market inefficiencies in emerging economies. Most professors would have been thrilled with a 20-page deep dive into sovereign debt. Sterling just looked at me over his spectacles, his gaze like a razor. Kevin, he said, his voice echoing in the empty lecture hall after class. This paper is technically flawless, but the data isn't the problem. You are. I stood there, still wearing my grease-stained work shirt from the diner shift. Sir, why are you hiding? He sapped. Why are you wasting your time at this mid-tier, crumbling state school? Your analytical capacity belongs at a research institution, or a hedge fund, or SD. Judes, I felt a ghost of a flinch at the mention of Ryan's school. I'm here because I can afford to be here, Professor. Pathetic, he whispered, though not unkindly. You're calculating your worth based on your current liquid assets. That's a rookie mistake. You should be calculating based on your future discounted cash flows. He leaned forward, slamming a folder onto his desk. I'm nominating you for the Sterling Grant. Yes, it's named after my family's foundation. No, I won't give it to you because I like you. I'll give it to you because you're the first student I've seen in a decade who understands that economics isn't about money, it's about leverage. He gave me one condition, one covenant in the contract. If you win, you don't stay here. You transfer to the most prestigious partner school in the network. You walk into the Lion's Den St. Jude's University and you take every honest credit they have. I want you to show the market exactly what a written-off asset can do when it's properly capitalized. I looked at the application. It was more than a scholarship. It was a weapon. I realized Sterling wasn't just a teacher. He was my first real angel investor. He saw the numbers in my head before the world saw the results on my transcript. I accept the terms, I said. Good, he replied, already looking back at his notes. Now go wash that coffee smell of your hands. You have a hostile takeover to prepare for. The acceptance letter from the Sterling Foundation didn't just change my life. It gave me the capital to disappear. $320,000. It was a total buyout. It covered full tuition at SD. Jude's, a luxury dorm, books, and a stipend that meant I never had to smell burnt coffee or floor wax again unless I wanted to. But I didn't celebrate. I executed. Step 1. I changed my phone number. Step 2. I scrubbed my social media presence. Step 3. I blocked my parents and Ryan on every platform that mattered. I left exactly one line of communication open, a secondary email address. I checked once a week. My mother would send frantic messages asking why I wasn't answering calls. I would reply with the emotional depth of a bank statement. Busy with work. Shifts are long. I'm safe. Focus on Ryan's semester. They fell for it. In their minds, I was still the low-yield asset hauling heavy crates in some dusty Ohio warehouse. They pictured me in a flannel shirt, tired and defeated, learning my place in the world. Meanwhile, I was walking through the Gothic arches of SD. Jude's University.it was surreal. I stood on the same quad where Ryan took his campus life photos, but I was a shadow. I wore plain hoodies and kept my head down. I didn't join a fraternity. I joined the honors research group. I didn't go to the tailgates. I spent my Saturdays in the North Library, the one reserved for upper-level graduate researchers. The irony was delicious. SD. Jude's is a massive campus, but the elite finance circles are small. There were days I'd be sitting on the 4th floor of the library, buried in sovereign debt restructuring models, and I'd look down through the glass atrium. 2 floors below, I could see Ryan at a large table with his brothers, his $200 sweatshirt draped over his shoulders, laughing and pretending to study. He had no idea that his failure of a brother was sitting right above him, outworking him, outcalculating him, and slowly stealing the very air he breathed. I was a virus in his system, silent and undetected, waiting for the right moment to go terminal. I wasn't just getting a degree anymore. I was ghosting through their reality, preparing a correction for the market that they never saw coming. The collision happened during finals week. The air in the library was thick with the smell of Red Bull and desperation. I was tucked away in my usual corner of the economics wing, a quiet, glass-walled study pod. I had my noise-cancelling headphones on, drowning out the world with a steady stream of data. Then, the door to the wing swung open. Ryan walked in with 3 of his fraternity brothers. They were loud, their voices carrying that specific tone of unearned confidence. Ryan was wearing SD. Jude's varsity jacket, a $5 latte in his hand, laughing at something one of his friends said. Then he looked toward the window. Our eyes locked. The transition from laughter to pure, unadulterated shock was the most satisfying market correction I'd ever witnessed. His hand went slack. The latte hit the floor. the plastic lid popping off as dark liquid splattered across his white sneakers. "Kevin?" His voice was a strangled whisper. He stepped toward my pod, his friends trailing behind him with confused expressions. He looked at my designer laptop, my stacks of high-level research papers, and then at my face. What are you doing here?" he stammered. He looked around as if waiting for a hidden camera to appear. "Wait, are you working here now? Did Dad get you a job on the cleaning crew?" I didn't blink. I slowly reached for my lanyard, the one with the gold-flecked SD. "Jude's Honors Scholar ID card." I placed it on the table between us. "I don't mop these floors, Ryan." "I own them," I said, my voice steady and cold. He picked up the card, his fingers trembling. He saw the Senior Finance and Econometrics designation. He saw the Presidential Scholar seal. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. It was a total system crash. "Does Dad know?" He finally managed to choke out. "No," I replied, leaning back and closing my laptop with a definitive click. I stood up, looming just a bit taller than I used to. "And you're not going to tell him? You're going to keep your mouth shut and let him enjoy his strategic investment for a few more weeks?" I stepped closer, lowering my voice so his friends couldn't hear. "Don't ruin the surprise, Ryan. He spent $300,000 to see you walk that stage. Let's make sure he gets exactly what he paid for." I walked past him, leaving him standing in a puddle of his own spilled coffee. I didn't look back. The glitch was fixed. The reality was setting in. The air at the podium was thin. Graduation day at SD. Jude's wasn't just a ceremony. It was a coronation for the elite. But as I looked out at the sea of black caps, I wasn't there to celebrate their traditions. I was there to dismantle them. I adjusted the microphone. The silence that followed was heavy. In the front row, my father looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He wasn't looking at the program anymore. He was looking at the low-yield asset he'd tried to liquidate 4 years ago, now standing as the highest-ranked graduate in the university. "Good morning," I began. My voice didn't shake. Usually, these speeches are about gratitude. We thank the people who funded us, the parents who bet on our success. But today, I want to talk about a different kind of investment. I locked eyes with my father. "We live in a world that tries to calculate human worth in a spreadsheet," I said, my voice projecting to the very back of the stadium. "We are told who is a growth stock and who is a written-off asset. We are told that if the ROI isn't immediate, the person isn't worth the capital." A murmur ran through the faculty behind me. I didn't stop. I want to speak to the people who weren't a safe bet. I want to talk about the 4 a.m. infrastructure, the smell of cheap coffee in a diner at midnight, the weight of an industrial mop while you memorize economic models because no one is coming to pay your way. Real value isn't something a fund manager assigns to you. Real value is forged in the darkness, in the moments when the people who were supposed to believe in you decide you are not worth the risk. I saw my mother's hand fly to her mouth. My father's head began to sink, his shoulders pulling inward. The strategic planner was finally seeing the one variable he'd missed. "Will, you can't calculate a human soul in Excel," I concluded. "And you certainly can't predict the trajectory of someone who has nothing left to lose. To those of you who were told you weren't enough, don't wait for an investor. Become the founder of your own life." Hostile takeovers aren't just for Wall Street. They're for anyone who refuses to be a footnote in someone else's balance sheet. As I stepped back, the silence lingered for a heartbeat before the stadium erupted. It wasn't just applause. It was a roar, but I didn't stay to soak it in. I watched my father. He didn't clap. He just sat there, staring at the turf, his strategy lying in ruins at his feet. The market had closed for the day, and for the first time, he was the one in the red. The reception tent was a blur of champagne flutes and forced smiles, but for me, the air was cold. I was standing near the edge of the lawn when I saw them, the Miller family unit, pushing through the crowd. My father reached me first. His face was flushed, a strange mix of desperate pride and lingering shock. He reached out, his arms opening as if he were about to claim a prize he just won at an auction. "Kevin," he boomed, his voice projecting for the benefit of the nearby faculty. "My God, son, we're so proud. We always knew you had this in you. We always knew you were special." I didn't move. I didn't lean in. I simply raised one hand, palm out, a universal gesture for stop. He froze mid-step, his arms hovering in the air like a broken machine. "Don't, Harold," I said. I didn't call him Dad. That title had been revoked the night he steeped his fingers in his Greenwich study. Let's not rewrite history. It's bad for the record, Kevin honey. My mother stepped forward, her eyes wet with what she probably thought was maternal love. We didn't realize. If we had known you were capable of this, that's the point, isn't it? I interrupted. My voice was quiet, steady, and utterly devoid of heat. You only value what you can measure. You audited my soul and decided the numbers didn't add up. You didn't always know. You bet against me. My father straightened his tie, his corporate reflex kicking in to hide his shame. Look, I made a mistake in the projection. We can fix this. We'll have a celebratory dinner. We'll talk about your next steps. Maybe a position at the firm. I'm not a line item you can re-enter into the budget, I said. Today, I'm not your son. I am the living proof of your failed audit. I am the asset you threw away that just became the market leader. I leaned in just enough so only he could hear me. In 7 days, I start as a senior analyst at Blackwood and Associates in Manhattan. His jaw tightened. Blackwood wasn't just a firm. They were the primary rivals to my father's company. They had been trying to dismantle his portfolio for years. I'm moving to New York, I continued, stepping back and smoothing my gown. And when we meet in a boardroom next year, Harold, I won't be looking for a father. I'll be looking for the inefficiencies in your strategy. Just like you taught me. I turned my back on them before they could respond. I didn't need their apology, and I didn't need their pride. I had settled the debt in full. I am 24 now. I'm standing by the floor-to-ceiling window of my apartment in Manhattan. Outside, the city is a frantic grid of glowing yellow veins and steel towers. A world that never stops calculating. My place isn't a penthouse, far from it. It's a studio, barely big enough for my desk and a bed. But every square inch of this hardwood belongs to me. There are no strategic partners here. No investors who can threaten to pull their capital if I don't meet their projections. My phone vibrates on the marble countertop. I don't have to look at the screen to know who it is. Harold Miller. He's been calling more lately. He leaves voicemails filled with business advice and market insights, trying to bridge the gap with the only language he knows. He talks about interest rates and merger rumors as if they're a substitute for a relationship. He's trying to buy his way back into my life with information, hoping I'll finally value his expertise. I don't pick up. It's not out of malice. It's not even out of anger anymore. Anger is an expensive emotion. It requires an investment of energy that I'm no longer willing to spend on him. I don't answer because I simply don't need his quotes. I've built my own data set for 20 years. I thought my worth was a fluctuating number that only he had the authority to track. I thought I had to be exceptional just to be visible. But standing here, watching the lights of New York, I realized the most important lesson I ever learned wasn't in a textbook or a library. It's this. You can never truly lose if the only person making a bet on you is yourself. When you are your own primary investor, the market can't touch you. You don't fear the audit. You don't fear being written off. You just keep building. I take a sip of my coffee, the expensive kind, the kind that doesn't smell like a diner at 4 o'clock am, and I set the phone to silent. The city hums beneath me, a massive machine of risk and reward. But inside these 4 walls, the ledger is balanced. I am Kevin Miller. I am 24 years old, and I am finally completely self-funded. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments.